The Strait of Hormuz is widely known as a critical geopolitical choke point. Measuring just 34 kilometers wide at its narrowest constriction, this strip of water serves as the industrial artery through which a significant portion of the world's petroleum passes. Directly beneath the hulls of these tankers, the strait functions as a highly compressed marine sanctuary, harboring an array of ancient, massive marine megafauna that navigate the same narrow lanes as the commercial traffic. The geographical and environmental conditions here are among the most extreme on Earth. This 34-kilometer compression zone is characterized by intense salinity and summer surface temperatures that frequently reach 36 degrees Celsius. This raises the question of why the largest open ocean predators in the Indian Ocean deliberately migrate into a geographic bottleneck that aggressively works to overheat and dehydrate them. This 3D cross-section shows the underlying oceanographic engine, an inverse estuarine circulation system. In the Persian Gulf, high evaporation rates create water that is dense and hypersaline. This heavy water sinks and flows eastward along the bottom, while lighter, nutrient-rich water from the open ocean flows westward along the surface. When massive tidal volumes from the Indian Ocean hit the sharp bathymetric drop-offs of the strait, they undergo tidal jetting. The water is physically compressed by the narrow geography, causing current velocities to skyrocket to over 4 knots. As these opposing water masses grind past each other, the resulting vertical shearing shatters the ocean's thermal layers. Nutrients that have settled in the deep canyons are violently forced up into the sunlit surface zone. This continuous physical churning acts as a natural fertilization process. It triggers explosive blooms of phytoplankton, which in turn attract the shoals of baitfish that draw the ocean's largest predators into the concentrated space of the strait. Whale sharks arrive seasonally to exploit the zooplankton patches trapped in these upwelling zones. These 15-meter filter feeders use the strait not just as a transit corridor, but as a critical high-energy feeding station. To feed efficiently in high-velocity waters, they utilize a behavior called vertical ram filtration. The sharks position themselves vertically in the water column, allowing the powerful tidal currents to push water through their gaping mouths and gill plates, straining out thousands of kilograms of plankton without expending energy to swim. While this adaptation is energetically efficient, it requires these surface-dwelling giants to feed just meters below the heaviest commercial ship traffic in the world. The richness of the food web also attracts nomadic pods of killer whales. These apex predators enter the strait specifically to hunt secondary consumers, including large rays, sea turtles, and dolphins. Within the confined geography of the Masandam fjords, the orcas utilize the steep underwater drop-offs to their advantage. By driving their prey against the sheer vertical cliffs of the strait, they eliminate escape routes and maximize their hunting efficiency. In this environment, the narrow geography and jagged bathymetry serve as a tactical advantage for predators with the social complexity to coordinate their hunts. For most marine life, moving from the open ocean into 36-degree water with extreme salinity levels imposes severe physiological stress. Survival here requires instantaneous behavioral and biochemical adjustments. Large pelagic species manage the intense summer heat by utilizing the deep, cooler bottom currents as a thermal refuge. This chart shows a typical diving profile, where the animal rests in the deep canyons during the day, ascending to the surface only at night when temperatures are lower. To prevent dehydration in the hypersaline environment, sharks and rays utilize a specialized osmoregulatory adaptation. They retain urea and other metabolic waste products in their blood and tissues, which elevates their internal osmotic pressure to match the surrounding seawater and prevents water loss at the cellular level. This biological flexibility allows large predators like the bull shark and hammerhead to cross the threshold of the strait without suffering systemic osmotic shock. As the world's oceans become warmer and more saline, the species successfully hunting and feeding within this bottleneck provide direct insight into how marine life adapts to the planet's most volatile conditions. Human geopolitics may claim control over the surface of the strait, but the survival of these massive animals illustrates a complex biological endurance that predates modern maritime trade. Plunge down from the sunlit surface of the strait, past the reach of the sun, and you hit a labyrinth of deep underwater fractures. Down here in the pitch-black canyons, an entirely different cast of marine life takes over. Take the myctophyti, commonly known as the lanternfish. They have rows of glowing blue organs called photophores along their bellies. By emitting a faint light that matches the exact intensity of the sunlight filtering down from the surface layers, they erase their own shadows, making them completely invisible to visual predators looking up from the depths. Further down, moving silently through fields of cold water corals, are the deep water scavengers. This deep-sea footage captures a blunt-nosed sixgill shark, a prehistoric predator whose skeletal structure has barely changed since the Triassic period, patrolling the rocky trench floor to clean up carcasses that sink from the upper water columns. Before we look at the immense industrial pressures threatening these deep-sea survivors, take a second to like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel so we can keep bringing you into these hidden worlds. Life in these pressurized abyssal pockets runs on an incredibly slow evolutionary clock. These organisms rely on specialized senses, chemical energy, and the slow rain of organic debris. That delicate, slow-motion existence is on a direct collision course with the relentless, high-speed industrial machine operating directly above them. The arid nations bordering the Persian Gulf secure their drinking water through massive industrial desalination plants. These coastal mega-facilities suck in billions of liters of seawater, extract the fresh water, and pump the residual waste product, known as desalination brine, right back into the ocean. This brine is incredibly hot and exceptionally salty. Worse, it's laced with heavy chlorine additives and volatile anti-scaling chemicals used to scrub the industrial desalination machinery clean. Looking at this 3D model of the strait, you can see how the brine's extreme density prevents it from mixing with the upper water column. Instead, it hits the seafloor, pooling into massive plumes migrating eastward. Settling into canyons, they strip oxygen from the water, creating extreme hypoxia that suffocates deep-water corals, wiping out foundational habitats that support the entire trench food web. Moving up from the seafloor into the midwater column, we find resident and transiting cetaceans like humpback dolphins and killer whales. These highly intelligent mammals are practically blind in the murky coastal waters. They rely entirely on their acoustic space, using echolocation clicks and communication whistles to map their three-dimensional environment, hunt prey, and maintain social bonds. But the strait is packed with supertankers. Their massive, churning steel propellers generate intense, low-frequency cavitation noise that violently shatters the dolphin's acoustic space. Unlike the open ocean, this rumbling bounces off the narrow, steep-walled underwater canyons, creating an inescapable acoustic fog. This continuous sonic bombardment induces severe acoustic stress and spikes chronic cortisol levels in the animals. Stripped of their primary sense, these pods are left blind, disoriented, and highly vulnerable to being struck by the very ships deafening them. Up in the top 2 meters of the water column, the sunlit surface layer serves as the primary feeding ground for giant pelagic filter feeders like massive manta rays and whale sharks. The problem is the deep underwater draft of a fully loaded supertanker can exceed 20 meters. These oceanic monoliths plow directly through those exact same surface feeding grounds, turning narrow shipping corridors into lethal obstacle courses for basking animals. When a whale shark is struck by a ship's hull or steel propeller, the trauma is usually fatal. And because whale sharks have cartilaginous skeletons and lack a swim bladder, the internal gas-filled organ most fish use to stay buoyant, they possess negative buoyancy. When they die, they sink rapidly to the ocean floor. As a result, the vast majority of these fatal collisions go completely undocumented. As if the physical traffic wasn't enough, the ecosystem is absorbing a severe climate shock. The region is seeing an intense rise in marine heat waves. When sea surface temperatures spike above 36 degrees Celsius, the hot water physically cannot hold as much dissolved oxygen, triggering rapid thermal deoxygenation. Large apex predators and highly active pelagic fish have massive metabolic oxygen demands. Caught in water that is both suffocatingly hot and depleted of oxygen, these animals are forced into a state of metabolic crisis. To survive, they must abandon their rich feeding grounds in the strait and flee into deeper, cooler, but far less productive open ocean waters. Protecting this biological highway requires us to pull back from the local waters and look at the global system. Because the strait is a highly dynamic, shared international waterway, localized conservation efforts are useless. We need macro-level technological management. The answer lies in dynamic ocean management. Instead of relying on static shipping lanes drawn on a map decades ago, this system uses real-time data from satellite networks and underwater hydrophone arrays to track seasonal aggregations of whale sharks and transiting orcapods. When animals enter the shipping lanes, the system automatically transmits an alert to all incoming commercial vessels. Once an alert is received, ships execute minor, dynamic route alterations to bypass the animals and implement mandatory speed reductions, dropping below 10 knots. Slowing down slashes the acoustic roar of the engines and gives surface giants the critical reaction time they need to dive away from massive holes. But technology alone isn't enough. The legal architecture of the strait is split between the territorial waters of Oman and Iran. To actually protect these transiting megafauna, both nations must establish a transboundary marine protected area, sharing satellite data, coordinating anti-poaching patrols, and enforcing unified environmental standards across the border, treating the strait as a single, shared ecological entity. Integrating smart shipping lanes with unified political borders allows the Strait of Hormuz to transcend its reputation as a global shipping choke point. In doing so, it becomes a world-class model for marine survival, proving human commerce and ancient marine life can thrive within the same narrow gateway.